Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Court. I cover healthcare here at Bloomberg News. Everything really from COVID-19 to some of the latest treatments in a wide array of diseases. Today, we're here to talk about the next big thing in cancer care. Curing cancer remains one of the biggest challenges of the 21st century. In this session, we ask what next generation cancer treatments are being developed and what has the most potential to change how patients receive care. We look at some of the new technologies and therapies that could get us closer to making cancer a manageable disease. Here with me today is Robert Stone, President and CEO of City of Hope, a leading cancer treatment and research center based in California. Stone is a lawyer by training and has been at City of Hope since joining the legal department there 25 years ago. Thanks for being here with us today, Robert.
Thank you, Emma. It's my pleasure to spend a few minutes with you.
So I think it might be helpful to start off by talking about cancer in a kind of a big picture fashion. It's obviously a group of many different diseases, and there have been some really dramatic changes in terms of treatment of cancer in the last few years. I'm thinking specifically of things like immunotherapies, which harness the body's natural immune system to try to rev it up and better treat cancer. As well as other innovations like using cell therapies. I'm hoping you could kind of lay the landscape for us a little bit. Where are we right now, and where do you see cancer care going from here? You know, I think everyone watching here today is really interested in sort of what are the most promising new therapeutic innovations that are coming around in the near term.
Well, Emma, as you said, cancer is no longer recognized as one condition, but as multiple conditions. And with the emergence of gene sequencing technology, it soon may be viewed as potentially hundreds of conditions, and your cancer is going to be categorized by the mutation of your genes. And it leads to a wonderful and wondrous era of innovation and discovery. So you've named quite a few. Cellular therapy, immunotherapy, using your body to fight cancer, recognize and fight cancer. Precision medicine, the ability to have highly specialized and personalized treatment plans and options so that we can benefit patients on a unique basis. It's an exciting time. I think there's a disconnect, however, and it's where I think the field is going to lead. There is such hope created by these innovations and discovery, but there's a gap that continues to develop and widen for those who actually have access to the discoveries. And I think the future, we all have to focus on how do we get the right treatment to the right individuals, but at the right time. And you have to recognize that the best chance for a cure is your first chance for a cure.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It actually leads me right into my next question. Unfortunately, as we know, what kinds of care you get really can vary depending on where you get it, right? And hopefully you're lucky enough to be able to access care, unfortunately. So, we know cancer patients can sometimes travel really far to get access to certain specialists, for instance, or participate in new clinical trials. What do you see making the biggest difference for patients who are, not necessarily getting treated at a top-notch center like City of Hope? I know you guys are doing some work in this area as well to try to kind of change the access paradigm.
Well, so I think we have to do two things. One, we have to be as innovative with our delivery mechanisms as we are with our scientific innovations. City of Hope is one of 51 comprehensive cancer centers as designated by the National Cancer Institute. It's at these large research and academic centers where a lot of the innovation is discovered and first taken to patients. Yet 80% of the cancer care in this country is delivered in the community setting, and we have to bridge the gap so that patients who are seen in the community are able to get access to these therapies. I have more than 100 doctors in our community network. They're general oncologists. They're tremendous doctors. They see many patients each day. They provide comfort to their patients. They provide great care to their patients, but they can't keep up with all of the discovery that's happening on such a frenzied pace. So you have to be able to tie those two places together. And second, you have to be willing to find partnerships and realize that what we can do with like-minded organizations is profoundly more impactful than any one institution can do alone.
Yeah, and I know you're kind of working on a partnership like that, right? This partnership called Access Hope.
We are. So Access Hope is a way of reaching out to employers. We have 20 of the Fortune 500 companies right now as clients, and the idea is bridging innovation with side of care. So we partner with community oncologists. So if an employee of one of these employers is diagnosed with cancer, or a family member of one of these employers is diagnosed with cancer, we support the community oncologist with getting the right treatment plan, with looking at genomic information, and with making sure that the diagnosis is correct. And recently, Northwestern University and Dana-Farber Cancer Center joined us, and it's one example of how organizations who are dedicated to eliminating cancer can come together to make a difference. You know, it brings to mind one other thing, which is we also, as we come together, have the need to advocate for the cancer patient, have the need to make sure that the cancer patient gets timely care. City of Hope led a consortium out here in California to draft, and then it was passed by the California State Legislature, a cancer patient's Bill of Rights that dictated what the rights were for a cancer patient to timely access to information in a culturally relevant manner, to clinical trials. It allowed us to make sure that your outcome isn't dictated by your zip code, that it's dictated by where the best treatments are for your particular cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I thought the Access Hope model is interesting because you hear more about these kinds of partnerships now, the idea that you could take a specialist or someone who's a really kind of top-notch academic and partner with more people in the community, experts and clinicians in the community, to sort of, you know, increase the realm of what's possible, and also kind of consult as well, right? I mean, we can all use a little help now and then. You know, I think, you know, as you're pointing out, not everyone still has access to this kind of treatment. You know, I'm wondering, you mentioned personalized medicine, this idea of precision treatments for diseases like cancer, and it's a term you hear all the time in healthcare, and it's something that can also seem pretty vague, right? Like, what does that really mean in practice to have your treatment highly personalized for you? So I'm hoping you can kind of explain to us a little bit, unpack what that looks like, you know, to a patient who's getting this kind of treatment.
Sure. Well, let's take a step back. We talked about earlier that cancer is a series of subtypes and a number of diseases, not one disease, and that it eventually, I think in the not too distant future, will be categorized by your mutation. We're still in the infancy and early stages of understanding how certain mutations can be impacted by different treatments and different treatment options. But we're learning everything from early genomic screening, which leads to an understanding of your individual condition, your individual cancer. And it leads to an earlier diagnosis. It allows us to catch cancer when it's easier to treat. It ensures that we're putting patients on the most appropriate treatment plan. And having the right treatment plan early in the cancer journey, just by definition, will lead to better outcomes. You know, and it's interesting. One of the things we haven't yet talked about, but it impacts both the innovations that we started with and personalized medicine, is then access to clinical trials. And at City of Hope, 1 in every 4 patients that comes to us enrolls in a treatment clinical trial. And what that shows me is that the science is moving so quickly, and the knowledge is moving so quickly, that we have the ability to bring new therapies to bear before they even become the standard of care.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you think about new therapies and how that treatment landscape is evolving, this idea of precision medicine does seem to loom really large. It's in fact, probably largely because we have these tools that allow us to have such deep genetic insights into cancers. How do you see cancer treatments evolving because of that? I think one thing that I know you're really interested in is how cancer treatment may change. Now we think of it so predominantly in terms of where the cancer originated, right? Is it a breast cancer? Is it a lung cancer? And I think you were describing that that idea is going to shift as we have better genetic insights.
Yeah, so I don't want to put you on the spot, so I will just use you as an example. 1 in 3 men in this country, 1 in 3 women in this country will have a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. And if you think about how many people will have cancer, and then if you've been lucky enough not to have cancer, chances are you have a family member who has had cancer, or you have a friend who has had cancer, and it impacts everyone. And what precision medicine, one aspect of precision medicine one aspect of what it allows us to do is it allows us to look for risks, not just for you for early detection, but also your family members. We can inform family members of genetic results so that they know, are they high risk or average risk for cancer, and does that mean they should take different approaches, early detection, have more often, be screened more often, or are they at lower risk, in which case they don't need that as much early detection. That's where precision medicine can tailor treatments, not just for an individual cancer patient, but for society as a whole. And if we go back to where we started, which is this widening gap between the innovations like precision medicine and the access to those innovations, it highlights why having a tie between the academic centers and the community providers is so crucial. Things like Access Hope, things like the advocacy that I described earlier, are part of the future, and I think the next frontier.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the sort of, when you talk about next generation treatments, clinical trials are a big focus, especially in cancer care. How do we make that access better? Can you talk a little bit, especially with a focus on equity, right? If typical patients in the community can't access clinical trials as well as they can at a big center like City of Hope, how equitable are these treatments really being parceled out?
Well, it is a constant area of focus to make sure that we have diversity in our clinical trial enrollments. I mentioned earlier that City of Hope has 1 in every 4 patients are on a clinical trial. That translates into, at any given time, we have 1,000 clinical trials available, and often the most appropriate and best care for an individual is through a clinical trial. We have to be able to communicate better and offer these clinical trials in a way that is culturally sensitive and addresses fears that people have. I mean, I've seen the fears range from reduction in quality of life to they're concerned about taking a placebo to the inconvenience of traveling. Think about it. If you are on a clinical trial and you need to be at a doctor's doctor's office in 5 days in a row, or 5 days out of 10, and you have to travel because it's at a community, it's at an academic center, you're not going to enroll in that trial, because a disproportionate number of these trials are at academic centers, and that impacts the elderly and the low income even more. And so this idea of closing the gap and making not just care but trials available in the community is really important to solving that problem.